and Allie, one of the things we'll certainly hit is like quotes and where all that stuff can come from. The minimum would be 3-body paragraph. You can write more than 3-body paragraphs, but if you write only 2, like you did for the journal, you're coming up short. Now, there's not a word count or minimum or anything like that. I would say that the more successful essays, whether it be this year or over the years, probably tend to fall in that 1,100 to 1,300 word count. But you're not losing points if it's 974 words or 1,296. Sean, you needed 4 more. You just lost points for it. That kind of thing's not going to happen. No. With your 3-body paragraphs, anyone remember what the citation requirement was for the Grapes of Wrath?
2.
At least 2 quoted, and then a 3rd cited example to go with it. So each body paragraph would have at least 3 citations and a minimum then of the 2 quotes. Now, if you want all 3 to be quotes, no problem with that, whatsoever. So grand total, you're taking a look at 9 cited examples from the book, and the plan would be that there's like a range of evidence. So your essay is not just the second half, you're looking at the whole entire thing.
So now when you're saying like the 2 and 1, that's per paragraph, right?
Right.
So like what if you take, like say it would be a whole first paragraph, but it's like just a whole block of words, you take it into 2 smaller paragraphs, would that work or no? Or would you still need 3 citations?
So you are citing 1 paragraph from the book but splitting it into 2 halves? Is what you're saying?
No, like instead of doing like 3 body paragraphs, say you do like 5.
Okay.
Do you still need, would you need 15 citations?
No.
Okay.
No. So if, I bet 100% of people write 3-body paragraphs, but let's say you do 4-body paragraphs because you think it just works, the requirement would still be 9.
Okay.
Okay? Yeah, I'm not going to punish you for writing, because I don't look at the paragraph as you writing more stuff for the sake of writing more stuff, but it's probably just going to be structurally, it makes sense to split this up. So in theory, you kind of could, I guess, technically have a body paragraph maybe that doesn't have any citations. But if you make any kind of assertions about what's happening in the text, you would still certainly want to back it up. Allie's question now was, can I reuse quotes from my journals? Because you have a grand total. Some of you have 8 direct quotations. If you quoted, 4 times in each journal. I'm not printing out the journals or looking at them side by side to see if you took the same quotes. The chances of you using all 8 are pretty slim, because if you use those 8, number one, that means for most of you, you're going to have 8 quotes coming from the first half of the book, which isn't equal representation, and you're probably going to be taking some square pegs and trying to fit them into round holes just to kind of use those quotes. So if you're going through and you're, hey, that quote I used in my first journal, that would be perfect for right here, then go back and use it. Think of it as you doing kind of 2 pre-writing rough draft exercises before this essay. I'm okay with that. But certainly don't limit yourself just to the stuff that you did in your independent reading journals. And I know people are at different comfort levels with this. Some of you still like to quote big, long passages, just the way that you are at this point. That's fine. Some of you are now starting to get into the point where you can take like phrases that get used in the book and blend it in with your own writing. I'm a fan of that. Me personally. Doesn't mean it's the only way you have to do it, because there's a more natural flow, there's some continuity to the paragraph. Now sometimes you do need to do a lengthier passage, for a quotation, but don't feel that you have to use those big, long passages. Conversely, one of the first prompt that we'll take a look at, number 3, it's a rhetorical analysis essay. So you're going to have 3 examples. That doesn't mean you're going to have 3 separate examples of symbolism necessarily. You might have 2 examples of the symbol. Your 3rd quote might kind of reinforce the author's argument. So as long as those examples, those quotes, those citations are working to convey the argument, you're okay. It's not a rule that all 9 examples are 9 literary devices for a given rhetorical analysis essay. So if you find the stuff that's going to be most appropriate for you to get your argument, You had a hand up
Yeah.
all along.
I don't know if this is kind of what Sean has, but like sometimes when I'm writing and I try to get like three quotes and three explanations in one paragraph, the paragraph just gets way too long.
Yeah,
So,
and
like,
well, I'm sorry.
go ahead.
You don't have to do that.
Okay.
Like so it and not like criticizing you or Sean as like a cookie cutter thing, but I think that's kind of what happened a lot with the Grapes of Wrath. Was here's my first example of imagery, here's my second example of imagery, here's now my third example of imagery. And not saying that I want you to take quotes therefore from the same page, but if, say, I'm using imagery as a rhetorical device, I might have one example of imagery, I complement it with this other example of imagery. My explanation kind of ties in both of those together as opposed to repeating the same rationale twice. And maybe my third example highlights the argument that those two examples of imagery are doing together. That would be perfectly okay. I would say if you were doing a rhetorical analysis, at least two of the examples should be that device. Because by definition, like rhetorical analysis, you're explaining how that device gets used throughout the course of a whole block.
So it's like okay to break up your paragraphs just so that you're not mixing them all and not have repeats.
Yeah.
Okay, just breaking them up for the sake of like to not have like a page and a half instead of like.
I mean, you don't want paragraphs that are going to be running for a page and a half. But I don't want you to feel like I need to write a page and a half about one device and one argument if it's getting overly repetitive. So your analysis can kind of bring those examples together. This is where like the training wheels are kind of starting to come off because you're understanding this stuff more now than you did back when. Just because you've written so much now at this point.
Could you break up a quote and like explain different parts of it?
Yeah, that would be okay. I would say if it's like one chunk of text coming from the book, it's still only going to count as one example because you're putting, but you could certainly break that part up. And more folks are, I think, getting comfortable with using the ellipsis where the dot dot dot. Or if I don't need that part of the quote, why include it? Now, if Jake has a big long quote, he better include the device part. Don't go dot dot dot. Oh, you'll read it. You'll know what I mean. You're including the parts that you want me to read, but you're recognizing I don't need this stuff for point that I'm trying to do. And just like the journals, the to-be verb rules would be in effect. Folks are getting a lot better at that one. Now again, remember, it's intro, conclusion, first, last sentence of body paragraph. So you can have to-be verbs in your body paragraphs, I just don't want it the first, last sentence. And if Grace has like the word is 12 times in 4 sentences, I'll probably let her know, hey, there's a little bit of an issue here. But it's not that you can never use the term. Any other general questions? Works cited page, make sure you have. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
In your course syllabus, I think it's on like page 21, and then 22, 23, you got a checklist. Might not be a bad idea just to look at it again and make sure for the intro you're doing your stuff where you do have a hook, transition sentence into the author, into the title. People have gotten very good with your formatting of the title. People were using the italics. 1984 was the book that people would always forget to italicize because you use it on italicized numbers. That hasn't been an issue. So those little, you folks have been very good at avoiding the silly stuff that could kind of hurt the score. Except for quoting from like the same page four times. We're getting there. We're learning.
They were good quotes.
They were good. That was a great page.
That's hot, right?
It's a really good page.
No, sit down.
That's impressive.
I feel like he just opened up the book and said, "That's the page I'm going to write
Oh,
about."
you didn't even know.
No, I went looking for it.
Fire, not
1984.
Wait, what page?
That ending was depressing.
Alright.
69, I think it was.
And...
All right.
Oh, what's so funny?
Number for the prompts, I don't care which one you use. I would say, and this is not criticism of it, you'll see why. I think number 3 is the safe choice. Doesn't mean the easy choice, but I think it'd be the one that you're most familiar with at this point. Some novels in play seem to advocate changes in social or political attitudes or in traditions. Choose a novel and note briefly the particular attitude or traditions that the author wishes to modify. And these are, of course, worded kind of generally since you have 6 books. So what's an attitude or tradition that the writer wishes to modify? Then analyze the techniques the author uses to influence the reader's or audience's views. Avoid plot summary. Since it says analyze the techniques that the author's using, you know this essay is rhetorical analysis. And that's why it's the safe choice, because it's one that you've done multiple times. So if you want to write something that you are familiar with from a structural standpoint, number 3 would be the one that you would go with. The thing that you would have to make sure that you take a look at, what's the viewpoint or the tradition that the author wants to kind of change, or modify. So you're not limited to a specific argument, but it better deal with some kind of tradition or modification that the author's looking to make. All right. But if you want to write something where I've done this before, I have examples. I just wrote an independent reading journal. Number 3 would be one to go with. What you can't do is take independent reading journal number 2 and add a third body paragraph and a quote here or there and be done with it. I'm looking for like a new essay. It's happened before.
Did you notice?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and it's going to show up. Byron Spear, plagiarism, like 84%. Wait a minute, what's going on? And then it goes back to your independent reading journal that you just submitted. And I'll give you that academic integrity statement to sign next week. And one of the things on there is I'm not reusing my previous work, which would be your independent reading journal.
Oh wait, question. But if you did do that, would you be able to make your like some of the same quotes?
Well, probably.
Oh yeah, because like.
I mean, it would depend upon the argument that you, because for the rhetorical analysis that you just did, you chose an argument. So it's conceivable, that for your book, your argument was pretty well in line with it. Certainly, going back to Allie's point, can I use all my quotes from my old ones? Keep in mind, I want you to cover the book. So we're looking for a range of support. So I'm going to have some concerns if your examples of imagery are, page 41, 64, and 78. And then those similes are from page, 58, 73, 91, where it's going to sound like, all right, we're still kind of stuck in that first half. But it would not shock me if there's not some definite parallels between Journal 2 and essay number 3, prompt 3, if you went that way. So I'm not going to think poorly of Emma if you take that choice. But I would think your evidence would be a little bit wider, in range and scale. So number 3 is rhetorical analysis. You'd be doing at least 3 devices. Any questions about that? Number 3 is the only type of prompt that you've already done this year. The others are not rhetorical analysis. They're not DRQ. They're certainly not a synthesis essay. They're more like thematic kind of arguments that are taking place. Simply went that route because, hey, synthesis, DRQ, rhetorical analysis can get kind of dull after a while. So if you want something a little bit different, you have those options of 4, 5, and 6. So that's kind of like the reasoning behind it. If you're going, hey, I need more practice for rhetorical analysis, write number 3. If you need more practice with DRQ, do that on your own time. Talk to me. Oh, I can give you prompts. I can give you prompts. That's not a problem. I'll give you someone else's essay and then be like, DRQ why their argument was good or bad. Kobe does that with peer editing like all the time.
Yep.
Jake has thick skin at this point.
Jake goes home and cries.
You may have caused his mind.
Number 4. Writers often highlight the values of a culture or society by using characters who are alienated from that culture or society because of gender, race, class, or creed. Choose a novel in which such a character plays a significant role and show how that character's alienation reveals the surrounding society's assumptions or moral values. does not have to be the protagonist for the character. But I do want you to stick with one character. So don't write a paragraph about Gatsby, don't write a paragraph about Daisy, write a paragraph about Tom, or a paragraph about Winston, a paragraph about Julia, or a paragraph about Frederick, and a paragraph about Catherine, or a paragraph about Edna, and somebody else. Robert. The Awakening.
Do you want to work?
Now, you're not worried about devices. So you're not looking for diction, you're not looking for imagery, you're not looking for symbolism. You still might quote some things that have those things in it, but you're not looking to explain what these rhetorical devices do. For number 4, you're looking to prove how this character is alienated and what that alienation reveals about that surrounding society's moral values. So this is when we go, how do I write this now?
How do I write this number?
Does it have to be like literally alienated, or can it just be like kind of like this stigma that's attached to them?
I would say the words alienation, that's within the prompt. I would say that, and this might not directly answer your question, I would say that encompasses being exiled, isolating yourself. It could certainly be like a physical alienation where you're kicked out. It could be more of a psychological alienation. Like, since we've all read The Catcher in the Rye, you could argue, whether or not Holden is alienated. Some would go, yes, he is. People don't understand him. Others would go, no, he just doesn't accept help when people offer it. So it doesn't have to be a physical separation, isolation that would be occurring. You could write this essay for The Catcher in the Rye, and I don't think I have any issues with it. So I guess within that context, it's kind of up to you to kind of decide how you want to use it. Any ideas structure-wise?
3 different big examples, or for each paragraph is a big example of how they're discriminated against, I guess, and how they're alienated against.
The only issue with you going with 3 main examples is you're probably going to have then 3 chunks of quotes. Say one example on page 104,
Yeah.
I'm probably going to have something from 103, 104, 105.
Oh, that's true.
And then I'm going to have something from 170, 171, 172. I'd say, Kobe.
You could say, the aspects of the character that are exiled. Alien. And then just list what they detail about the moral values of society.
Okay, by aspects, do you mean how they're alienated?
What's different about them that they are alienated?
Okay.
Mind, body, spirit.
And depending upon the book, you could have a character who is physically alienated and also psychologically alienated. And it might not be separate examples, Sean, the way that you were talking about, but you could have a character where you go, and this is the physical alienation that takes place. This is the psychological alienation that takes place. From a simplicity standpoint, and then Byron, we can get to you, I would save this for my 3rd body paragraph. I'm driving home that point as to what this alienation reveals about the surrounding society's assumptions. So I'm going last body paragraph here to make sure I drive home that point. The Catcher in the Rye prompt that you folks did, it's been a while now, there was that, overall significance to the meaning of the work as a whole. This is kind of like that, where I'm driving home why this alienation is important. So if I have a character who has multiple types of alienation, I can take a look at that. In the body paragraphs, I could kind of look at a step-by-step process as to how that alienation starts to take place and really comes to fruition. And then I'm explaining, boom, this is why it's important. You might have a character who resolves that alienation. So maybe one body paragraph, this is how he's alienated or she's alienated. This is how a resolution takes place. This is why it's important to that meaning of the work as a whole in the surrounding society. The issue, the challenge with 6 books is, there's 6 different types of alienation that's kind of taking place there. Byron, did you have?
Can you do this, talk about 3 different assumptions
So like for right here,
I think you could talk about how society value lying and
for 1984, I think that option would be there. Yes, I don't think that option's there for all the books, but I think for yours, yeah, I think you could, and I don't have a problem with that. And I certainly do my best not to go. All right, Byron's writing about 1984, so this is the structure that he's going to use. Because there's certainly not one correct format to go with it. I would still say make sure it revolves around still that one character, because I think otherwise it's going to get really loose. It'll feel like 3 mini essays. This character is this assumption, this character is another assumption, this character is a third assumption. I still try to have some, I want to say semblance of organization, but something that grounds it together, and that being that one character. But yeah, I'd be okay with that. Anything else? And again, if you're going, nah, that's not going to work for me, then you don't worry about it, you do something else. But again, all prompts should work for all books.
I mean, it's kind of like my own personal books problem, like the way I'm looking at it. But with number 4, I'm thinking about trying to do the interpretation of how he got integrated back into society. My character got integrated back into society after he was alienated. But did integration happen after? I was going to discuss a little more about it. So how would
What we doing?
1985.
I would say with that ending, and not that everyone's done with it yet, that you're really looking at like the final pages of it. That wouldn't throw the whole thing off. I would think that you would lump that in probably with this part here. I would say. And if you got questions about it, let me know. But we're not going to belabor it when not everyone's familiar with it. All right. All right. Number 5. Don't quote this in your introduction. It's there. I know it's there. You know it's there. If you answer number 5, don't go. Faye Weldon once observed that the writers, I do believe, who get the best and most lasting response from the readers are the writers who offer a happy ending through moral development. By happy ending, I do not mean mere fortunate events, a marriage, or a last-minute rescue from death, but some kind of spiritual reassessment or moral reconciliation, even with the self, even at death. So choose a book, which you have, identify what that spiritual reassessment or moral reconciliation is evident in the ending, and explain its overall significance to the meaning of the work as a whole. The immediate concern that folks have is, how am I supposed to write about a whole entire book if the prompt wants me to write about the end? Well, if you're talking about a change in a character, we kind of need to know what the character was like before, which was probably not at the end of the book. You detail the events that lead to the change, and then you let us know how that character ultimately has changed. So certainly, yes, there will be emphasis placed on the end. You kind of have to, but we need to know what that character was like earlier. So by getting early stages, events leading up to the change that takes place, and then that overall significance to the work as a whole, I think you got some clear paragraph order that could happen. This would be one that I could see maybe some folks going 4-body, character like early, events leading to change, overall importance. I think you still could certainly do it in 3-body paragraphs. Still having significance of the work as a whole as its last one, kind of taking a look at character like before, and then in that 2nd-body paragraph, events leading to it and what is that ultimate change that occurs. But you are certainly looking at the ending of the book. But that doesn't mean that 8 out of the 9 examples, are going to be coming from the end of the book. Gracie, okay? Questions on that one? Now, spiritual reassessment, moral reconciliation, like Kobe, this can kind of go with your, like, you know, you talk about a character kind of getting integrated back. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily a good change that has necessarily happened, but there's still a reassessment that has occurred. You can still write about that, you know, with this one. Spoiler alert: Gatsby dies.
Oh my gosh.
Whoa.
What the heck?
But you can still write about him for that. You haven't
Winston
finished Gatsby
Mead.
yet. Shame on you.
Winston Mead.
He's been out. Because I knew it would make you uncomfortable.
Does Winston get shot at the end?
Stop.
Any questions about 5?
Spoiler alert: Jesus comes back from the dead.
Number 6. From a novel, choose a character. Again, not necessarily the protagonist, but choose a character whose mind's pulled in conflicting directions. This prompt tells you how to set up your body paragraphs. So whose mind's being pulled in conflicting directions, 2 compelling desires, ambitions, obligations, influences. Then in the essay, identify each of the 2 conflicting forces and explain how this conflict with one character illuminates the meaning of the work as a whole. So first body paragraph, desire number 1. Second body paragraph, desire number 2. Third, how does that illuminate the meaning of the work as a whole? Choose one character, doesn't have to be the main character.
For like the desire, does it have to be the one that they really want, or is this like, could it be a desire that's forced upon? Well, like say.
So is it 2 desires that they want? No, you could have a
I mean, like, say someone's forcing something.
I would say obligations influences. So one of them could be an obligation, one of them could be a desire.
Okay.
And that's usually how it goes. I mean, yes, you do have some issues where, yeah, I got 2 different desires. But like most of them, society wants me to do this, I want to do that is the most common conflict of it. Whether you're doing 1984, Hot Finn, Awakening, Gatsby, Farewell to Arms, The Jungle. Structurally, I think number 6 is the most friendly. Number 3 is the one that you're most used to do.
And 4 or 5 is this.
Yeah, 4 or 5 of those. They're not bad by any means. They're ones you gotta think about. Any issues? Concerns? Whatever you do, make sure it's an argument you can support from throughout the course of the book. Don't fall in love with certain chapter, certain page. If I guess an issue that you could have with number 6, because I bet number 6 is going to be a popular one. If Allie chooses a character who's not present throughout much of the book, it might be tough to explain how that illuminates the meaning of the book as a whole. Again, it doesn't mean you have to do a protagonist. In some books, you can kind of argue who the protagonist is, so it's between a couple people, but I'd make sure that you do go with a character who's there throughout the majority of the book. Focusing on a person who has like a chapter or 2, you're going to limit your range, your scope of that. Tuesday, 28, 19.
You look like you're trying to keep up with the